you haven't seen the previous video in this series, follow the link on your screen or click the link in the description or pinned comment below.
What a lovely day!
My name is Max.
I'm not even the main protagonist of this movie, but I am the narrator.
Jeremy, don't let the anti-woke cult hear you say that. They're under the assumption that a movie is entirely based on who the film is named after. You know better than to excite their remaining brain cell. So the sin here is for abuse of the disabled.
My world is fire and blood.
And dust, and gasoline, and oil, and more dust, and further dust.
Yeah, but aren't gasoline and oil both flammable? So shouldn't your dust quip be all there is?
Also narration.
Wait, you already said narration, remember? You know, back when we talked about the anti-wokies.
It was hard to know who was more crazy. Me or everyone else.
If Max was still Mel Gibson, the answer would be fairly easy to figure out.
I like the joke, but that's not a sin for this movie. That's a sin for Christianity and racism and Mel's parents for not raising him better.
These cars made no sound until they made an appearance in the film.
Yes, Jeremy, we all saw that. Thanks for that useless information.
I am the one who runs from both the living and the dead.
Are you any better at running from the dead than you appear to be at running from the living?
Jeremy yells at the screen cliche.
Also, during the apocalypse, there's plenty of testing strips to determine blood type.
Honestly, ask yourself, why wouldn't there be? If this group of survivors determined they needed information about blood, why would they not have these items? Australia is a first world country, so these would definitely exist there prior to the apocalypse. An apocalypse doesn't just mean everything vanishes into thin air, and I would think something as superfluous to one's survival as blood test strips would be plentiful. They'd be like black licorice. Nobody wants that shit, so it'll still be there.
After patiently letting them tattoo him for hours, Max finally breaks at the mere distant idea of being branded.
I have a large tattoo, and I have been burned badly enough to have a scar. Trust me, I'll take getting tattooed any day. Except if the tattoo is on the inside of the elbow, in which case give me the brand.
If you're wondering if you're on drugs or why frames are missing, relax. This is a director's choice to intentionally remove a few frames here and there to help you feel the same urgent anxiety Max is feeling. Of course, if you have actual anxiety issues or PTSD, this only serves to increase your personal anxiousness parallel to whatever film tension it develops. But they're actually anxious, right?
Why don't we make video games out of Braille? Take some time and let that sink in. My point is, we cannot always cater to the disabled and have to produce most things for the non-disabled majority. Does it suck that disabled people cannot enjoy life the same way abled people can? Sure does, but I would argue that this is an example of the trolley problem. Neuter the artist's vision because some people have anxiety issues, or fulfill the wishes of the artist because the majority of people will be fine? The answer is obvious.
Why are all these guys bald and painted white? Movie has zero interest in explaining, and while I'm tempted to remove sins for ballsiness, I have to award a sin for sheer wardrobe-driven character development.
The film demonstrates the War Boys are fanatic followers of Immortan Joe, as they have strange rituals and display unwavering loyalty up to the willingness to die for him. That's all you need to know. They are a cult, and that's all that's important for the story. Perhaps they're white because Joe is white, and their bald head represents their unworthiness compared to the Fabio-haired Joe. It doesn't matter. What matters is when you see one of these guys, they stand out against the backdrop of the desert, and you know they will die for Joe. That's how the visual storytelling of this film works.
What is this, a summer blockbuster or a Tool video?
I would hit you with a, Jeremy makes a pop culture rap, but then people would have to know who or what the hell a tool is. They don't. Sit back down, Gen X. I just heard your knees pop.
Wait, when did these guys get crane hook pulling hooks? Did they know they need them while they were mindlessly chasing after Max?
Jeremy, would it kill you to pay attention for once in your life? You clearly see a door to nowhere here, right? This means this door usually opens for access to this crane, and if that's the case, these hooks would very likely be sitting next to the door until they are needed. Come on, man. None of the 11 writers at CinemaSins could put their collective 9 brain cells together to figure that one out?
This crazy son of a bitch must rule with absolute f***ing terror, because it would take like 1 day of not cleaning that wound for infection and sweet, sweet death to set in.
Those two things have literally nothing to do with each other.
Immortan Joe!
The Immortan part is cool, but he decided to stick with Joe? Not Immortan Hellbeast? Or Father Fury? Or Sexy Joseph the Machine? Or any other 1,000 badass things you could change your name to if you're a fascist dictator? Joe it is, I guess.
This is one of those things that's up to taste, but I feel like Immortan Joe is pretty badass. What say you, Captain Sparrow?
I like it. Simple, easy to remember.
Furiosa!
Movie introduces us to the awesomeness that is Furiosa here. My only question is, considering how all the attractive women are treated in this town, basically Immortan Joe's personal baby factory, how did Furiosa escape that life? I know I look like Charlize Theron, but trust me, I'm way better at driving trucks.
Okay, so I've seen the prequel to this film already, and I know the answer to this question. I also know what the audience is gonna say. Well, it was impossible for anyone to have this information when this film came out. Well, since the prequel and this film were written at the same time, I feel like it's okay to give the answers to that question, as questions don't have expiration dates and can be answered at any time. So the real answer is he tried. He did try to make Furiosa one of his wives. The problem is she escaped and pretended to be one of the slave boys. Now, an answer that would be acceptable for the time before we knew that answer would be Furiosa is disfigured. Through watching this film, we learn Joe is seeking to produce healthy babies and his wives are all physically perfect, which he believes aids his attempt at producing a healthy baby. Prior to the film Furiosa, we didn't know why Furiosa didn't have an arm, and it could be safely assumed Joe rejected her based on that.
Okay, first of all, how is the region's water somehow located and contained a dozen stories up on a rock thingy? Doesn't this defy all science and gravity knowledge?
No, it does not. Please pay attention. These people are pumping the water from a well inside the earth. They explicitly tell you this in the film.
Second of all, this is the least efficient water gifting system ever invented. I realize he's a dickhead, but he's literally wasting 90% of the water he's releasing right now.
And yes, that's kind of the point. When you see him quickly shut off the water, you see that although he is wasting some, the purpose is to be a stingy asshole to keep the people subjugated. It's kind of like how Rockstar refuses to release a Grand Theft Auto game on PC at release. They absolutely could do that, but they'd rather you return for the double dip.
Also, here are some slave women who are being treated like literal cows. Just to drive home the point that this is a really f***ed up situation, let's literally dehumanize some fat women, society's easiest targets.
Correction, society's easiest targets are flat earthers. In today's climate, if you make fun of fat women, you'll wake up in the gulag not realizing how you got there.
Your produce ain't turned to gas town.
Why didn't Furiosa wait until she was completely out of view before she made that turn?
Well, Jeremy, let's take a look at the scene to see if we can answer that question, shall we? Damn, looks like no matter where Furiosa could have taken that turn, they would have still been able to see her through that telescope, huh? Also, let's listen to what Corpus Colossus says to see why she turned when she did.
She's going off-road. Into hostile territory.
Sounds like there was a movie reason for her actions, and that simply watching the movie would have answered your question.
Also, how did she coordinate the smuggling of all those pregnant women into her truck without anyone seeing them? Not to mention breaking into this safe and slipping past everyone in the complex.
Furiosa has been performing routine runs from the Citadel to Bullet Farm. She knows the intricacies of the Citadel and would be aware of who'd be on guard duty and where they'd be. She smuggled the wives out at night when most people were sleeping.
Whoa, this society of criminal assholes takes one of the few universal donors they come across and straps him to the spiky front of a war vehicle headed into battle. Because why again?
Because they are not afraid of death and actively welcome it, believing they'll be reborn because some dude with long hair told them they would. You know, Christians.
This porcupine car is useful only if attacked by stabbable flesh-based human things. Otherwise, just throw a gasoline water balloon at it and set the fire. I mean, right?
No. Gasoline would eat through a balloon like it was toilet paper. Even if you were able to get gas inside the balloon, and you can't, the vapor might cause the balloon to expand and then burst, potentially igniting the vapor and liquid, killing the user before they even got to use it. Do you even gasoline?
She thinks she can lose us, Dad!
Ah, yes, the old lose them in the unnatural dust storm of lightning and radiation trick.
Is this a cliche? I mean, because I've only seen it in a couple movies at this point. This and Dune Part 1. Oh, and Wrath of Khan.
Furiosa ripped off the Mutara Nebula maneuver from the Wrath of Khan.
See?
This semi is able to drive close enough to a sand lightning tornado to push this other nearby vehicle into oblivion, without somehow getting sucked into the tornado itself.
That's not what happened, and it's a wonder that you have visual evidence and still came to the wrong conclusion. Prior to the collision, you can see the car was doing just fine driving through the high winds. The problem is, once the war rig knocked it off its wheels, it took flight. This is very similar to how the wings on race cars keep them planted at high speeds, but once one of their wheels comes off the ground, it's welcome to the Mile High Club.
Everybody survives this wicked crash, including Max, who flops off the car like a plaything while the wreckage somehow misses him completely as they bounce on the ground.
Wait, what was that?
While the wreckage somehow misses him completely as they bounce on the ground.
One more time.
Misses him completely. Completely. Let's all take a second to ponder the mind of a man who developed this device.
You mean P. Diddy?
You know, just in case I'm hanging around outside my truck with no weapons, I've got this hide-a-gun thing here in case of emergencies.
You literally just watched a scene of Russian immigrants attacking the war rig for the food inside of it. Why does having a weapon where an enemy least expects it not make sense to you?
That's the second time since he took possession of this gun that he's fired 3 shots to stop someone in their tracks. How many does he have left? And why is he so f***ing wasteful of the precious few bullets he has? Does he need to fire 3 times as a warning twice?
The weapon Max is using is a Glock 17, the 17 mirroring the magazine capacity. If he fired 6 shots, he should have 12 left, assuming the mag was full and there was 1 in the chamber.
Of all the legs you had to shoot, that one was attached to his favorite.
What, are you going to tell him Max was the one responsible for it? Why would you do that? And why is he in any more danger than he was in already? Such an odd thing to say.
It's totally not, considering Joe isn't after Max, nor is he aware of his existence. Joe is chasing Furiosa. Should he become aware Max was the one who damaged his wife, he might be subject to torture, like skinning his Johnson and periodically having salt thrown at it. My mind is pretty f***ed up.
He's a crazy smeg who eats schlanger.
Girl, what?
This is Aussie slang. She's basically saying he eats a bag of dicks. You know, you have to translate Australian to English. Not even the Brits understand them, and they call the front of a car a bonnet.
I'll go.
Yeah, but don't you now leave all the women alone up here with all those weapons you meticulously took out of their reach a minute ago?
No, because he takes the bag of guns with him, something you cut out of the video for some reason.
Whatever you do, you can't be seen. I'm supposed to be alone.
Didn't you just say...
I need you here. You may have to drive the rig.
Those sound like contradictory statements.
Only if you're stupid and not paying attention. Hell, the film literally force-feeds you the explanation with the very next scene, showing her words in action.
Justin Bieber's post-apocalyptic masturbatory fantasy.
You can tell this video is old as shit. I mean, a Justin Bieber reference? Sheesh, those are as old as YouTube itself.
Lots of gunfire at this mostly fuel-carrying big rig result in a bunch of ricochets.
The war rig is actually mostly carrying produce. The pod on the rear is where the fuel is, and as you can see, Furiosa isn't anywhere near it.
This girl is not remotely surprised by the sudden enemy on board their escape vehicle. Not only that, but she also sees through his rambling and instantly decides this is a guy she wants to f very soon.
You seem to have missed all the times these women tell you that they care for the war boys and that they are basically innocent, having been brainwashed by a charismatic cult leader.
Guy who has dedicated his entire life to impressing Joe gives up totally and joins the good guys because the power of sand boners is super strong.
No, Nux is conflicted after having been rejected by his god. That's literally what happened in the Bible, when Morpheus gave Altair the fruit of the tree of blasphemy. He would then go on to be the king of Saudi Arabia and fight the Goliath of Archimedes with a slingshot. Don't you read? Also, Jeremy says boner.
Barry.
What the f***? Who names their cysts, let alone draws smiley faces on them?
A whacked-out cultist high on copium? You know, a Critical Drinker subscriber.
This movie makes it seem like they drive way further than a semi should be able to drive on 1 tank of gas.
Unless you think they drove the equivalent distance of someone traveling from Los Angeles to Las Vegas and back. No, they didn't. Tankers typically have a range of about 500 miles. Do you notice you don't see as many truck stops as gas stations? Diesel, baby! No, not that kind of diesel.
Conductor of the choir of death!
No, that honor already belongs to Jimi Hendrix.
Well, that's a weird way of pronouncing Adolf.
You're bleeding.
That's not his blood.
How do you know that?
Because Furiosa is a badass that has seen some shit. Next question.
Want to know more about these assholes? Or why the father dude has a mask? Or why his followers paint themselves white? Well, too bad. F you. This movie is kicking too much ass to give you that kind of wussy backstory crap.
Exactly. What's the problem?
My clan was Swaddle Dog.
No offense, but that is a really lame clan name.
I think you keep forgetting this is Australia. You just pissed off like half the population of Adelaide.
Why the hell is this lookout naked? Is there one good reason for that? I'm not complaining, I'm just trying to figure out how that benefits the cause.
Naked women attract men. They are seeking to ambush men. Did you not hear Max when he said,
"That's bait"? Where does the water come from?
He pumps it up from deep in the earth.
Amazing he was able to find this fountain of water surrounded by a huge-ass rock fortress.
That is amazing, I agree. But this completely nullifies your earlier sin about this exact thing. Why the f*** didn't you revise your script to reflect this information?
And like every angry parent ever threatened, they are turning this car around. Went all that way to pick up some seeds, basically.
Seeds are pretty important to these people. Wait do you see what one of them does to someone's penis?
They're going back to the Citadel!
So, look, I totally agree that their decision to go back to the Citadel is something they needed to do, but couldn't they have tried to be a little bit more discreet when they drove back the other way? Maybe try to avoid being seen? Maybe even, I don't know, take a circular route?
Jesus Christ, the film literally explains why they went right at them. The goal was to set off an explosion that traps them in the canyon.
I suggest we go back the same way we came, through the canyon. So we take the war rig and we charge it right through the middle of them. We can decouple the tanker at the pass. Shut it off behind us.
Kaboom!
In fact, how the hell did they know Immortan Joe didn't give up and decide to go back to the Citadel? They simply assumed he'd still be hanging out, waiting, for no reason.
No, they assumed he'd be chasing them still, given this entire film has been a giant chase sequence. They have no reason to not believe that, and the only reason you think they do is because you, a member of the audience behind the fourth wall, saw something they have no way of knowing.
Wait, are you sure? Is she strong enough to catch a falling Tom Hardy with one hand while driving this massive war machine?
Maybe she isn't, but that mechanized arm sure is.
Why didn't Max kick this dude out, or kill him in the first place? Did he think he'd just sit here and do nothing the whole time?
Considering he's a big fat dude, I think Max figured he had two options. Either he was the Kingpin from Spider-Man, in which case...
He did.
Or he's what most Twitter users that talk shit are. Useless in a fight.
Ah yes, here's the ex machina the movie's been waiting for. Thank God Max is a universal donor. And he knows how to withdraw and give blood to a dying person. After all, from what we know about Max from the first few movies, that guy is virtually a doctor.
Fortunately, the first few movies don't count, as this is a reboot, and if he weren't a universal donor...
He did.
You will ride eternal, shiny and chrome.